Sunsets, caffeine, darkness, silence, and isolation. All things that become your new normal day on nights. Today, I want to talk to you a bit about some of the significant physical and mental health risks associated with night shift work. I'm sure those of you who are currently or have worked a night shift can relate to that body ache and constant fatigue from all the disrupted sleep and the mental fog that will eventually follow, or the beat that passes when you're trying to figure out what day of the week it is. The years of asking yourself, do I call this lunch or is this technically breakfast? Maybe it's dinner, or maybe it's girl dinner because really it's probably more like a snack. For those of you who haven't worked night shift, imagine taking your lunch at 3 a.m. in dead silence because everybody you know is asleep and all you can do is scroll TikTok. Or running your errands in the evening after work, but really the evening is 8 a.m. and the sun is out. You get to see the sunset when you wake up and the sunrise as you're getting ready for bed. The weekends are tricky because everybody else is getting up to start theirs while you're falling asleep. After 12 years as a police, fire, and medical dispatcher, rotating between days, swings, and night shift, I've suffered from cortisol issues, weight loss and gain, depression, anxiety, and even IBS diagnosis directly related to my many years on night shift. Along with my personal experience, I have found many studies and articles through the CWI Library and Google Scholar. So our first and what I think is our most important focus is going to be sleep. So from sleep, we're going to kind of focus on circadian misalignment and cortisol. So the root cause of most, if not all, issues that stem from night shift work is a disruption in our circadian rhythm and our cortisol secretion patterns. So as most of us know, circadian rhythm is our body's 24-hour clock. That 24-hour clock regulates our, again, hormone secretion, our metabolism, our immune function. It is our body's sleep-wake cycle. One of those hormones that it regulates is cortisol. Cortisol's key focus is energy metabolism and the body's stress and immune response. Of course, it has many other functions and uses, but those are some of the main ones here that we're going to focus on. So in a normal aligned circadian rhythm, so we want to think day shift workers, 8 to 4s, 9 to 5 workers. Cortisol follows a very specific pattern. It's described perfectly in an article from February this year, appropriately titled The Hidden Toll of Night Shift Work. It notes that cortisol peaks in the early morning, promoting wakefulness, alertness, and metabolic preparedness before gradually declining throughout the day to facilitate rest and recovery. So for a night shift worker, this pattern is reversed. Cortisol peaks at night during the body's natural shift when it should be at its lowest point, which of course is what leads to that misalignment that we see. That same article states that this misalignment and disrupted cortisol pattern eventually leads to metabolic, cardiovascular, and psychological issues, as well as an increased risk of chronic diseases like diabetes and depression, which we will touch on later. First up for disease, we have cardiovascular disease, which is really just an umbrella term for any disease of the heart and blood vessels. So think heart failure, stroke, heart disease. They all follow under that kind of basic term, cardiovascular disease. According to an article I found in Psychological Reports from February this year, shift workers have a 40% higher risk for cardiovascular disease compared to people who work day shifts. And that risk stems directly from those disrupted sleep patterns, that circadian misalignment, because it leads to a risk for higher blood pressure, insulin resistance, an imbalance in the body's metabolism. And when we're looking at blood pressure should follow that same pattern for a healthy individual as cortisol. It should have a surge upon waking and it should dip during sleep on a normal sleep schedule for a healthy individual. So for a night shift worker, there's an overall increase in blood pressure. There's an additional surge upon waking and little to no dip when falling asleep. So there's that overall increase and then no dip while sleeping. So referencing again that earlier article I mentioned, The Hidden Toll of Night Shift Work, they say that an altered sleep-wake cycle results in a blunted cortisol awakening response and elevated nocturnal cortisol levels associated with increased nighttime blood pressure and diminished nocturnal dipping, both predictors of cardiovascular risk. So again, in layman's terms, we don't have a normal cortisol spike when we wake up. That in combination with elevated cortisol and elevated blood pressure, when the body should be experiencing a decrease in both, is really just like a cardiovascular disease cocktail. Shifting our focus to the mental health effects of night shift work, just as a reminder for those cortisol patterns, they should follow that daily rhythm when healthy, as high in the morning, low in the evening. When working night shift, we're going to think high in the evening, low in the morning. Because those are reversed patterns, that keeps that stress alarm on, if we think of it as an alarm. When those, again, are reversed, that alarm is on constantly. It's on too high for too long. Those chronically elevated cortisol levels means your body is operating on a chronically stressed state. All of this is supported, again, by my favorite article that I've mentioned multiple times, The Hidden Toll of Night Shift Work, that says studies indicate that altered cortisol rhythms, such as disrupted daily pattern or elevated evening cortisol levels, correlate with increased anxiety symptoms. This hormonal dysregulation intensifies hyperactivity in your body's central stress response system, creating a self-perpetuating cycle of heightened stress and anxiety. So for me, 12 years of normal was chronic stress, anxiety, and elevated cortisol, all while I felt completely normal. Now, when we think of depression, we often think it's the opposite of anxiety. One is high, one is low, but really it's all regulated by the same area of the brain. And when your cortisol is out of rhythm, it's like your brain's mood thermostat is broken. So it can't regulate your emotions, making you feel more down and easily overwhelmed. And I learned from my doctor that chronically high levels of cortisol can result in either hyper or hypocortisolism. Hypercortisolism is as it sounds, it's hyper. It's a system pumping cortisol constantly, like an alarm stuck in the on position. This is normally seen in cases of severe depression where people feel deeply sad, guilty, and they can't eat or sleep. So that's where your weight loss comes in. They're in a constant state of high stress. Over time, that flood of cortisol is toxic to the brain and can cause damage. Hypo is the opposite. So this is where the system is worn out from overuse or from the history of chronic stress. So maybe a history of hypercortisolism. This is where the alarm should sound, but it can't even when it wants to. This is where people describe themselves as feeling heavy, extremely fatigued. They tend to sleep too much and they eat for comfort. This is where that weight gain comes in from depression. They don't have the energy for a stress response. So really the fundamental issue here is that chronic circadian misalignment, which directly leads to that dangerous dysregulation of cortisol secretion patterns. So this forces that body into the stress response system to be active at night, and it creates that state of biological confusion and chronic stress. And the consequences are severe and systemic. It impacts major bodily systems that we discussed, cardiovascular, which causes persistently elevated blood pressure, directly increasing hypertension, heart attack, risk of heart attack, heart disease, stroke. Metabolic, it suppresses melatonin, impairs insulin production, significantly raising the risk for type 2 diabetes. It disrupts our mental health. It disrupts the brain's stress response and can damage neural structures, fueling anxiety, depression, and mood disorders. Night shift is a job that absolutely pays in dollars, but it collects its debt in your health.